Thank you, Gianpiero. Let me ask you something before I open the floor to the audience for questions. Given that it seems that we add 3 months per each calendar year to our respective lives, so those of us who are now in their 50s will probably live, if things continue, probably 100 years. So we may need to probably take more educational courses, maybe more masters, renovate our PhDs. We will need also to update our skills and abilities. Do you expect that technology will be there to help us? Will there be, applications like we have for our physical bodies, no? Can we expect, this is an open question, that technology, both in terms of the educational process, as well as in terms of machines, will help us to perform better, become updated managers, face the challenges that may come ahead?
Yes. I mean, without a doubt.
Thank you. That's great to know. That's very hopeful.
I know I'm usually not very concise. So
what about our brains? Are they going to resist? Because, of course, we can apply, different orthopedic, complements to our body. But do you think that the brain, in 50 years' time, there will be solutions for remedying the challenges that we may have to face as managers, decision makers, leaders?
I mean, I'm sure there will be, as there always have been. See, I think the fundamental problem of leaders with more technology than humanity has always been there. I think what's interesting about contemporary technology is that it has democratized it. So there were very few people who had enough power to control technology that could harm themselves and others. And now there's a lot of people who can control technology that have power to harm themselves and others. I think, as always, I think it's easy to be dramatic. As always, at the beginning of a technological wave of innovation, it's very hard to tell which technologies will be mostly useful, or if used wisely, useful, and which technology will prove to be useless or mostly harmful. Now, let me say, for example, I really sincerely believe that some of the way digital platforms are designed today, which are obviously designed to create addiction, we'll come to think about them in 20 years the way we think about cigarettes today, that they have to come with a warning. I don't know when we get there. I don't know which ones they are. As Claudio said, we can't even predict the past, imagine the future, but we can imagine the future.
Okay.
But the conditions,
sure.
The conditions of how we live and the way the technology will be embedded into the things that we live with will change dramatically. So, for example, fabrics are already smart. They can already detect changes in your heartbeat, etc. Environments are already smart. They can change the light according to certain conditions. So the technology that we're living with every day is going to ask that leaders have a great deal of abundance of knowledge that they don't currently have in their roles as leaders. And so what a lot of heads of companies or schools or whatever are doing is they hire an IT group that's going to understand all of the technology. But of course, that's a recipe for failure because it's not integrated into the mission. So it has to be that whether it's a single leader or a team of leaders or a group, that everyone has to have the language, maybe not the full knowledge, but at least the language of how this change in embedded technology in our lives, bodies, augmented accessories, fabrics, and environments is going to change our cultures. That's the kind of re-education, the new education that leaders are going to need to actually be able to still be visionary in the environment that they're trying to lead in.
Fascinating. We have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Is there any? Okay. Right.
Tweets.
Thank you. Right. Is there any micro in the meantime?
Yeah. I've got one question back here. Sorry.
Right.
All of you, sorry, my name is MB Christie. I'm from London. All of you discussed the importance of diversity. but I found that the most conservative hiring group is usually the board. The first thing they look at on a non-exec director's CV is previous board experience. So it shuts out anybody who hasn't been on the board before, which makes the old boys club alive and well. How do you bring diversity into that group, and have you seen a change there?
I mean, you're absolutely right that that happens on the board. The board is inexperienced, for example, in CEO succession, so most board members have never been exposed to a CEO succession or to one, and they are uneducated. So what happens when uneducated, inexperienced people make decisions? So they go with their gut, and their gut, again, goes for the similar and the familiar who are male. So the way to do is to first speak with them, discuss what the challenges are, what are the competencies or abilities required for those challenges, and also educate them about the importance of potential. And we do this. We do this even when selecting board members. And if you do that, automatically, some women who did not have the experience but have the competence will be appointed. And even some women, for example, who didn't have even the competence because they were not allowed the chance to develop it, but have the potential, will be appointed. So that's the way, just to take this seriously. Peter Drucker wrote an article making people decisions, and he said, no decision is more important than people decisions because of their lasting consequences and because they are so difficult to undo. But he also said, no decisions are as bad as people decisions. And I think that this is still true today. Luckily, making great people decisions is not a gut feeling. It's a craft and a discipline that can be learned and should be learned. And one of the wonderful results will be increased diversity.
I mean, Claudio, excuse me, I have to disagree with Claudio a little bit in one thing. I don't think we are uneducated about these things. I don't think we're formally educated, but I think we are constantly educated by schools, but also by the media, by a lot of other images about what leaders look and act like. I mean, look at our business school case studies and look at the protagonists and tell me what they look like, what gender they are, and how they act, and I will tell you a very powerful educational force to maintain a certain image of leadership in place. Now, I think what you mean is, of course, we haven't been uneducated.
Yep.
We haven't been helped to unlearn the things that we have been taught since we were very, very little.
Yep. Or that we unconsciously have as our psychological bias. Because the primitive man needed to act very quickly, and these decisions that you make on similarity and familiarity go in the lower part of your brain, and they're unconscious. So, yeah.
Allow me just to raise another question. We just have 1 minute, so I encourage you maybe to answer quickly. But there's a question regarding whether we can train traditional employees or managers with a traditional profile with the design thinking tools that you employ.
Well, a lot of people think of design thinking as this kind of sauce that you put on top of the meal, and it's much deeper than that. I mean, yes, you can run people through exercises to give them a greater understanding of how to think creatively or how to navigate through uncertainty or deal with failure. But you can't just, sprinkle it on like salt.
Okay, thank you. Just a final question. How much of the current curriculum at business schools will change in the future or is applicable? Let me give a quick answer to this. It happens as in many other sciences. Probably if you take a medicine book of the 1930s, you'll see that many practices are not applicable today, such as bleeding, for example. No? But anyway, this is an evolving science, but I wonder whether you have some comments about this. Do you think that the curriculum at our schools will dramatically change in the future?
I mean, we are doing we're doing a big redesign of the curriculum right now, and I think any curriculum of any institution that wants to remain relevant will move towards personalization. It will provide the basic knowledge, perhaps through digital technology, and then it will serve what is harder to do through digital technology, which is get people to encounter each other and learn from each other. But I want to say something to what you were saying earlier, the person in the tweet. I think anyone can learn the things we're talking about if you make it safe enough for them to learn. The problem in a lot of organizations today, we use a threat strategy. People feel betrayed, and then they're told, and now you should learn. It's very, very hard to learn from someone who you feel betrayed you. This whole discourse of young people don't trust institutions. Why should they?
Well, thanks very much for your participation, and will you please join me in a round of applause for the panel? Thank you.